right, welcome in. It's Hump Day. It's a Wednesday edition of the Sports Huddle on SEMO ESPN Radio. You can find us at 1220 AM, 93.5 on the FM dial, and we're always online at SEMOESPN.com. And you can join us on the EBOMD Huddle hotline. That number is 573-334-1220. 573-334-1220. The Huddle hotline powered by EBOMD. We are in the Yuengling Sports Huddle Studios. Yuengling, the iconic American lager, America's oldest brewery, Yuengling. And we're going to get the show started by heading right to the EBOMD Huddle hotline, where the athletics director at Southeast Missouri State, Brady Barkey, is joining us on the EBOMD Huddle hotline. We're the vice president for intercollegiate athletics. That's a long title, Brady. Director of athletics. Can we still refer to you as that, or is it strictly the vice president now?
No, absolutely. You can refer to me as that. I get referred to as a lot worse. So director of athletics, certainly just fine.
All right. It's July 23rd. How busy are you this time of year?
You know, a different kind of busy probably this time of year. Not as much in the way of events and on the go, but certainly everything that's going on in college sports has made planning and, kind of implementation of all of this new world, a little bit more time consuming for us. And so spending a little more time behind the desk, mapping things out and trying to, to chart our course than maybe in previous years during the summer.
So when do the students report?
So, we've had a lot of them here on campus. Men's and women's basketball and football have been on campus all summer for workouts and many of them, taking class as well. So there's probably 125 or so of those. And then, handfuls of students and, other sports that are just around for the summer working and maybe doing some stuff on their own. But it'll be, the end of the month when fall practices officially get underway for soccer and football, and then shortly thereafter volleyball and cross country.
So it's another Commissioner's Cup trophy from the Ohio Valley Conference for Southeast Missouri State. How much pride do you take in something like that?
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount. We probably still don't celebrate. I was just telling one of our coaches last night, I said, I feel like I failed and that we probably haven't taken the time to celebrate it as a department the way that we should, because it's a heck of an accomplishment. But we're always focused on what's next, right? Nobody ever cares about your last one. They want to know about your next one. And so we need to do a better job of it, because they're not easy to come by. And, we went a long time waiting to win one. And so 3 out of the last 5 is certainly something that I'm proud of, and I know a lot of people here are as well.
So the Ohio Valley Conference, how close in terms of communication do you stay with the conference? And secondarily, do you foresee any movement in the near future by the OVC? We had a lot of upheaval when Jacksonville State, Austin Peay, Murray State, Belmont, Eastern Kentucky. I mean, there's been a lot of transition for the OVC. What do you foresee in the near future for the conference, and do you think that they are still looking to expand?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're in a much different place as a league than what we were several years ago. I think the stability is much better. That's not to say that there couldn't be a move or two in the future. I think, you just never know in today's climate. But I worry more so about, trickle-down effects that you have. I mean, you saw, even within FCS, is the, kind of ASUN has kind of made their shift with that, new conference and merging, and, does that stretch people to a point where they want to then maybe look at a different home or something like that, and or do they then get desperate looking for members and try to pull somebody, and then everything, dominoes from there. But I think our members, at least my read, I think are, pretty happy where they're at. I think, we're unique in a sense, as the OVC in our geography and our footprint, right? As people are trying to figure out cost containment in this new world so that you can invest your resources into student athletes more directly. Nobody wants to spend more to travel to compete, in conference games than what they have to. And so as you look at our conference footprint and you realize that, hey, half the schools in our league we could get on the bus and drive same day to, versus these other leagues that are, spending their resources on flights and those types of things, I think kind of uniquely positions us to maybe be able to have an advantage, as it relates to deployment of resources. And so I think most of the people in our league see that. I think we could benefit from another member. I think moving from 11 to 12 would benefit us from some scheduling standpoints. And certainly if that could be a football member, in my opinion, that would be even better. As you look at FCS moving into this 12-game schedule moving forward, if that's a game that could automatically be filled as another conference game, that's even better. And so I think you definitely want to keep that open as, as an initiative you want to be able to focus on. I wouldn't say we're desperate for it, but if there's somebody that makes sense that, can kind of check some of those boxes, then I think absolutely that would be something that, I think we would want to consider.
Brady Barkey, Vice President, Intercollegiate Athletics at Southeast Missouri State, our guest this morning on the EBOMD Huddle Hotline. Brady, there are 7 teams that are members of the Ohio Valley Conference that play football. Now it's the OVC Big South. For scheduling purposes, there are only 2 of those schools left, Charleston Southern and Gardner-Webb. What is the minimum that a conference needs to get the automatic bid to the playoffs, and how much longer is this deal with the Big South?
Yeah, so 6 schools has been the standard from an NCAA standpoint to ensure you can maintain your automatic qualification. We of course ran into some issues as we dealt with Lindenwood that was still in the transition phase, and prior to Western Illinois coming on board, where we had fallen below that threshold, and that really prompted that partnership with the Big South. They were kind of in a similar situation. And so it was a good stopgap measure for us. I think, they've had some league reputation of having some success from a football standpoint, and Gardner-Webb's one of those that even of recent, years they've had, some success. And so it made sense, and I think still to an extent it makes sense from a scheduling philosophy standpoint, because, if you've got a 12-game schedule and even sitting at 7 members, you've got 6 conference games, well, that means you still have to go out and find 6 non-conference games. And it gets really hard when you get into weeks, 5 and 6 of the season, and every other school you're trying to schedule is already in their conference schedule because they have more teams. And it just becomes difficult to find games that you can, schedule. And so there's some scheduling, assistance that provides. But it does take a financial toll on us. We have to fly down to those games. And it's not cheap to fly a football program to a game. It's, that's probably a $90,000 flight in a normal year. That's not your hotel and your buses or any of that. That's just, your air transportation. And so when you think about that versus, the days of being able to jump on a bus and, drive 2 hours to Murray State to play, that's significantly different in terms of your resources. And so, we're still in this partnership for, a couple more years. And, again, I think it has worked out for us. I think it's been positive in a lot of respects, but the financial component of it is certainly a challenge. And I think long term, is something that we have to be mindful of and figure out at some point, does it no longer make sense? And, we'll see what happens there. And obviously, as we talked about earlier, if you add another member that happens to be a football member, does that change things at all? And, that type of thing. But, it's a challenge financially for us for sure.
I remember a couple of years ago when the Red Hawks went to Bryant, and I think it might have been the last game of the year. Semo didn't play well in that game, and we talked to Coach Tuke prior to going out there, and he was not excited about going to that game. He didn't like it because of, first of all, the expense, and secondly, everybody knew Bryant was getting out of that league, and they would not be returning the game the following year. So I know Coach Tuke probably is still not excited about having to share things with the Big South. I don't want to speak for him, but it kind of felt like Coach Tuke was like, man, this is just a big waste to go all the way out there, and we're not even going to get a return game.
Yeah, that one certainly was unfortunate the way it played out. The Gardner-Webb and Charleston Southerns of that partnership have been better because we've seen return games, from that. Again, the fan interest maybe isn't as great. Just they're not going to travel well, and it's not a rivalry or anything we've been able to establish. So that doesn't help us as it relates to ticket, revenues and that type of thing. But as the person who manages the scheduling, I can tell you it's awful hard to find games in the middle of the season because everybody's in conference. And so it does alleviate some of those challenges. And I'm certainly okay with it in the short term. If I think that 6, 8, 10 years from now we're still going to be doing this, I think we're going to have to figure something out financially, for us. But certainly in the short term, I think it made sense probably for more reasons than it didn't.
So it is 6 home games at Houck Stadium this year. Last year it was just 5. Coach Tuke and yourself, you got to be excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly it's easier to win games when you're playing them at home. That makes a difference. But, I think our fan turnout last year and our ticket revenues from last year with 5 games, really excited to be able to have another one at home this year. And some, good ones on the schedule that we know people will be excited about and, that we think we'll have some really good turnouts for.
Yeah, 2 years ago it was only 4 home games, and I know that didn't excite anybody.
No, it didn't. I took a lot of heat over that one, and some of that, came from some of this conference fallout that we had, and we kind of got the short end of the stick on that one with, some scheduling cancellations and that type of thing. But I tell you, when you go through a year only 4 home games, it certainly makes you appreciate 5 and 6 a whole lot more.
Oh, no question about it. 38 days, by the way, 8 hours, 39 minutes until kickoff at Arkansas State, Brady. And, these are 2 programs. They don't play each other a lot in football. I can only remember playing them twice, and I know the last time was 2018. The time before that, Ron Hines was broadcasting with me. These 2 teams don't play each other in football a whole lot.
No, and it's a game, of course, that I think has some interest and that people do take notice of. I mean, if you're being candid, I think one of the challenges with that is these are games that have a financial purpose for us as well, and teams like Arkansas State, Sun Belt, or MAC schools, those kinds of things. They don't pay as well in those games as what an SEC or a Big Ten or Big 12 kind of opponent would, and so historically we've tended to favor those other games that can yield a little bit better revenue for us. But this was kind of a unique opportunity for us in a 12-game year that we were able to maybe be able to schedule a little bit differently and pair a game like this with a North Dakota State game and still meet some financial, goals that we have for ourselves, but give us what we hope will be more competitive games and more attractive matchups, for people. And so we can't do it every year, but this was one of those years, the way that the scheduling, laid out for us, that it gave us an opportunity to do that.
So how much money will you be taking in for the Arkansas State game? And I know it used to be that money went into the General Athletic Fund. Is that still the case? Does football get a bigger piece of that? How does it work these days? And how much money is this game?
Yeah, so, I think the Arkansas State game, I think for us, will be about $325,000. I think is what that game is. We'll pair that with North Dakota State. That'll be, in the upper 200s, for us. And so it kind of still yields a pretty similar, amount as what we would see playing a Kansas or Mizzou or, somebody like that. The way that we do budget it, we really approach things as an athletics department and general fund, kind of as a whole, as we deposit our revenues. But that being said, as we move into this new space of revenue sharing and all of that, those are dollars that at the end of the day, when we put the budget together, if we're able to yield additional dollars that give us an opportunity to be able to share revenues with student athletes, that's one of those areas that dollars come from. And so while we don't directly earmark them currently for that purpose, we know that those revenues will play a part in that moving forward. And so, that's something that we're trying to be mindful of as we move forward, because, we really want to be able to be in that space to be able to help recruit and retain our student athletes.
All right. I was asked yesterday on this show whether or not North Dakota State was returning the game next year or in the future, and that is not the case, right?
That's correct. Coach Tuke and I have talked for a long time about being able to get out to Fargo. As much as using it as a measuring stick, not just for the program, because I think, we all know what that program's like, but also the atmosphere, what kind of one of the premier football programs in the country, what their environment is like, that type of thing. We want people to see it. And so I hope that there are some people that, can make that trip, whether that's with us or on their own, to be able just to see that. Of course, on the field, we want to be able to use it as an opportunity to gauge where we are and be able to, see, how we can compete with the best programs in the country. But for a lot of reasons, we wanted to be able to have that. And then as we talked about whether that game being returned to Cape versus, essentially getting bought, felt like financially it made more sense for us to play that as a one-off versus, them returning that game to us. It just made the financials work a little bit easier for us. And we're not at a point yet where, we generate, a couple $100,000 from a home game. I hope that we can get to that point in the future, and that it makes those home games a lot easier to justify when we know that returning a game to us is going to yield, similar revenues. But, right now it didn't make sense. So we took that as a one-off game, and they won't return.
Brady Barkey is our guest this morning on the EBO MD Huddle Hotline. We're broadcasting from the Yuengling Sports Huddle studios. Brady, there is a new president at Southeast Missouri State, Brad Hodson, replacing, really just a tremendous fan of athletics in Dr. Vargas. How many discussions have you had with the incoming president, and what are you feeling in terms of, how much of an athletic booster he is?
Yeah. First of all, I think, I'm certainly really appreciative of Dr. Vargas and what he was able to do to help support athletics during his time, and the outward support that him and Pam showed on a regular basis for all of our programs. I think it went a long ways in getting us, where we are, and certainly on a personal level, I'm appreciative because he was the one who hired me and gave me the opportunity to be AD. And so certainly appreciative of him and all he's done. But, as we look at Dr. Hodson, he's been here now just a few weeks, but, he and I have had an opportunity to have conversations. I think he comes from places that, have had successful athletics programs. And, if you look at Pittsburgh State, for example, there's no one in the Division II space that's been more successful in football than them. And so he's seen it. He understands the impact, I think, is certainly going to be supportive of athletics and in that respect, understands the role that it can play on campus. But, at the same time, he's going to have to come in and like any new leader, come in and evaluate everything that, the institution is doing and figure out where the priorities, can be and what's going to help move the institution forward. And I feel like athletics can play a role in that. I feel like we've, shown that over the last, few years. But we're also in a really unique time right now. And there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of questions that, people have that I don't necessarily have the answers to as it relates to this post-house settlement era. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to work with him and kind of, develop that plan and path forward for us of how we can continue to invest in athletics and continue to use it as a positive tool for the university. And, I feel like he's going to be supportive of that and help us continue to elevate the programs. But I'll at least let him, make sure that he figures out where everywhere on campus is and all that first before we, hit him too hard with it. But so far, conversations have been really, really positive, and I think people are really going to enjoy getting to know him, and I think he's going to be really visible. We've already talked about some ideas and things he's wanting to do around football games and making sure that, he's part of, that environment on game days and that type of thing, which I think will be fantastic for people to see.
The Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics at SEMO is Brady Barkey. He's our guest this morning on the EBO MD Huddle Hotline. What is your role in scheduling? Let's just use men's basketball for an example. I know trying to get the schedule finalized, and when it is, it will get out to the fans and get out to the public. How involved are you in setting up the basketball schedule?
Yeah, so, basketball, certainly different than, football. Football, I primarily handle football scheduling. I think that's the way that it works pretty well across the country. And we work so much further in advance. And so, as we look at money games and those kinds of things in football, we're scheduling in the 2030s right now.
Wow.
Is kind of how that works. And so we work on that as athletic directors differently than a lot of the other sports. With basketball, Coach Korn works directly with other coaches on those schedules. Athletic directors don't tend to be involved in them the same way. He and I will talk about some of the revenue targets that we may want to see as it relates to money games. We'll talk a little bit about kind of what he thinks and where, maybe we're trying to get to from a scheduling philosophy. But I try to leave a lot of that to the coaches. I think they understand their roster. They understand, what's going to put them in the best position to be able to, compete to win a conference championship and ultimately get to the postseason. And so, I try to give them the freedom, kind of working within a set of parameters, but give them the freedom to be able to figure out who those exact opponents are and how the pieces of the puzzle go together. And, I think they appreciate that, and I think it's, been a pretty good formula for us, over the last, several years.
So a couple of weeks ago, we had Coach Korn on this show, and he was still deciding, or they really hadn't nailed down where they're going to play their tournament this year. And I'm speaking about the in-season tournament. I don't know the exact phrasing for that. You do. Have they made a decision on that yet?
So that's something they're still working on. Those multi-team events, those MTE events.
MTE, okay.
They give them an opportunity to usually go somewhere and play a couple of those. I know he and I talked as recently as, late last week, just kind of about where things were. And, I know that they're getting close to finalizing it. So many of those things are dominoes that, hey, we're still looking for one, home game. It could be on this date based upon Show Me Center availability. Well, if we get that, then maybe that impacts what days we're available for this other thing over here. And, they really have to put that puzzle together. And so I think he's got a pretty good idea of what they're going to do, where those last couple of games are going to fit in. But we haven't gotten to the point yet of signing those contracts. All of those will still come to me. I review and sign those contracts. So I know we're not quite there yet, but in talking with him, I know he's pretty close. So
what are the chances that it is somewhere tropical? I vote for Cancun.
I don't think we're going to make it there this year.
Okay.
We may find some places that have warmer weather at least. It may still be a nicer place. I don't know that, we're going to, head to Michigan in November, December for an MTE, but yeah, I don't think you're going to get your tropical vacation maybe that you're wishing for. You'll have to schedule that one on your own, it sounds like.
All right, you're an SIU guy. You hired an SIU guy who is the head coach, and he's been so successful. He just signed a contract extension, and Brad Korn. Why can't we get the Salukis on the men's basketball schedule? Play them in every other sport.
Yeah. I'd love to see that happen. I think for a number of different reasons, it didn't work out in the last few years. And I think that hasn't been a result of us not having an interest. I know that, we would love to have an opportunity to play that game, and I know our fans would love to see it. as they dealt with, and this is a little bit of speculation, but I think there's some truth in it. I think as they dealt with, coaches coming up on the ends of their contracts and then new coaches in their initial years of their contracts, I think that was maybe just a thing that, hey, maybe doesn't work this year for us to do that. I hope that it isn't going to go away completely and that we'll be able to get it back, on the schedule, because I do think that those are games that people would like to see. But at the same time, it's kind of funny because we look at those games as great opportunities for us to go and win games. When on paper, paper would tell you those shouldn't be games that we should play, because the fan support that schools in the Missouri Valley have, and the resources that they're able to put behind those programs in terms of what they're providing in, NIL to their student athletes, what they're paying schools to come and play games at their place for, they would tell you that those are games that we should lose on paper 99 times out of 100. But I think we've been able to have success in those, and I think it speaks to the coaches that we have and kind of some of what we do. But even all of that stuff aside, I'd love to see us get them back on the schedule and be able to continue to do it. I don't know if we'll see it this year, but I've had some conversations with their AD about trying to see, how do we get some stuff in the works in future years and making sure that we can extend some of this stuff out.
Brady Barkey is our guest, and I'm guessing they've got a trophy, the wheel, that the football series isn't going away anytime soon.
No, we've got it scheduled out for a few more years. And, we've talked about, hey, we're still going to be committed to playing it moving forward. Again, we try to be able to get our money games all set and then try to fill in that series from there. And so kind of in principle, I think we know that we want to continue to extend it out. We don't necessarily have all the dates set as you get into 2028, 29, 30, those types of years. But there isn't any plan for us to step away from that one. I think that one is something that's, pretty solid.
Oh, good. Are you at liberty to, we talk about money games in football. Are you at liberty to talk about, you're scheduling them years in advance, as you pointed out? Who are the Red Hawks playing the next few years for their money games?
So, we, as we look ahead into, future years and, not necessarily year by year, but I think teams that we have played in the past, I think we will see games circle back around to Mizzou, to Kansas, Iowa State. Those are all games that we'll see here in future years that are all under contract. And then there's also, this one's taken a little bit of time to get back around, but it's because of how far out everybody schedules. If you remember back to the COVID year, we were actually set to play Ole Miss that year, and we didn't play because of how the schedules got switched to the spring, and we didn't have any money games in that fall 2020 season. The earliest we could get them back on the schedule again was 2029. And so we will see Ole Miss back on the schedule again, as we get into 2029.
Now, so, the last time they played Ole Miss, I think Coach Samuel was here, right?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah. So, and they don't have, those games sometimes don't happen all the time. There's a lot of people that, play football down in that part of the country that are interested in trying to get those kinds of games. and, which is why we tend to end up in Kansas and, Missouri and, Iowa and those kinds of places a little more frequently because there aren't as many of schools like us traveling up north to play. It's much heavier of schools down south, trying to get into SEC country down there. I think those are great experiences. I mean, anytime you get into those kind of environments, certainly the games themselves are tough, but it's a really cool experience, I think, for student athletes and fans alike.
Any chats with Arkansas? I haven't played the Razorbacks in quite a long time. That was a very fun experience, just in terms of a full house. I'm not a big fan when they call the Hogs, but it was pretty cool when they called the Hogs in front of, a sellout crowd. And we just happened to play them the year they had Darren McFadden and Felix Jones in the same backfield. Is Arkansas a team that you occasionally will chat with about a potential football game?
Yeah, we've talked in the past. Some of that we couldn't get the dates to work.
Gotcha.
They might have been looking for a game in week 1, but we were only available in week 2 or something like that. So it is somebody we've talked with. I don't know if they'd be more inclined or less inclined to play us now after, what happened in Fayetteville a year ago with baseball. But, that is one that makes a lot of sense. I also try to be mindful of where do we have people in this community that have some interest in other schools and programs, too, that may help people travel to those games and, be a part of that as well. And so Ole Miss, Arkansas, obviously, are two of those places. Mizzou, another one. And then I think even as you get up into St. Louis, schools like Illinois are ones that if you can get those, I think absolutely you'd want an opportunity to be able to play those kinds of games. And from a travel standpoint, the closer the better. For us. And so those are kind of the way we try to do it. I think, you kind of find a radius and draw it around Cape Girardeau and try and figure out which ones maybe, have some opportunity and can you get something scheduled out, far enough in advance that you can make it work.
I think it's cool that Ole Miss is going to play SEMO in football. Even though the last time we were in Oxford was with baseball and Andy Sawyer's Redhawks slapped them around pretty good.
Yeah, I think Andy's found a way to do that with a couple of those. And it's got to be careful. It may start impacting our scheduling abilities.
Hey, how about the collective? I know you probably get a lot of questions about that and NIL money and how is all that working now after the House settlement, or has that changed anything?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're actually working through. There's a lot of questions across the country about it. There's been some initial guidance that, well, maybe, contracts between student athletes and collectives are not going to get approved, regardless of the amounts, just based upon how they've defined valid business purposes, and not to get too much into it. I think we had that structure in place, and so we had thought that there's maybe an opportunity for us to kind of at least continue down that path for a little bit as we kind of develop our structure and our plans moving forward. It's still too early to tell whether that's going to be the case or not. The collective has done a really good job of being able to raise resources to be able to help us in that space. Whether they'll continue to do that or whether we will kind of pivot and just shift it all in-house is kind of part of what we're trying to figure out, and how quickly would that happen. There's some benefits really to it in terms of bringing it in-house, because I think there's some tax advantages for people who want to donate, because they can donate to the university, and we are a 501c3 that allows them to have a tax benefit from it where a collective doesn't. And so there are some benefits to it. It streamlines it a little bit with us because we're able to, manage those contracts and payments directly with the student athletes, similar to what we would do with a scholarship. And so, I think long term, that's probably the goal, and I think the place that most people try to get to. But right now, it's still so new that we're trying to figure out the sequencing of that and exactly what makes the most sense. So the collective is still kind of hanging on and playing an important role for us. But we're working through them to try to figure out how does maybe that change moving forward and how to best develop that plan.
I know you've got a meeting coming up shortly, so just one more question. What is the current state of the Hauk project, and when do you think shovels in the dirt?
Yeah, probably not a lot different than maybe what I shared with you probably a year ago, and that, we're still continuing through our construction document, phase. We've gotten far enough along in this process that, we've been looking at, flooring samples and, lockers and chairs and, those types of things. And so it certainly is progressing to a point where, it's being brought to life and certainly feels real. Where I've been a little bit slow, with this in terms of being able to kind of publicly share this out is that I don't have the exact date or timeline of, hey, this is when this is going to go out to bid and this is when, construction will begin. And we went down that path a few years ago where maybe, we shared what we thought was our plan and it had to change. And we took a little bit of heat from people about, well, wait, I thought you said this and now it's this. So we've tried to be a little bit more reserved with what the message is. But I think for me personally, I still am hopeful that we can wrap up this kind of design phase by, this fall, be ready to go out to bid with it. And, that by early 2026, I think we would be ready to be under construction. And then, you're probably talking about an 18 to 24-month construction window. So I still kind of look at 2028 in my mind as, kind of, hey, here's our most likely time frame of when we would be able to see this next phase completed and opened. But still definitely is moving forward, and I'm really pleased with what the project is looking like from a design perspective, and I think it will definitely be a game changer for us.
And I know it would just be temporary. I'm guessing football games can still take place while construction is going on, but it might affect everybody gathering where they normally gather for tailgating.
Yeah, there are some things that, logistically we'll have to figure out in terms of lay down spaces and all of that. Probably not dissimilar from where things were when we were doing the initial phase and we had people that, had to enter from the end zone side or enter from the north side because there's disruption there. I think we'll see similar types of things when that construction actually begins. For me, the bigger question mark is going to be, from a lighting standpoint, our stadium lights will have to come down on that south side. We will have to reincorporate those into the next phase, which could impact game times and our ability to be able to do night games, or, how do we approach some of that, are probably our bigger question marks as it relates to just logistics once that construction actually begins.
Hey, I know you got to get to a meeting. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm sure the listeners certainly appreciate an update on just exactly what's going on in SEMO athletics. Thank you so much, Brady.
Absolutely, anytime, Eric.
All right, that is the Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics at Southeast Missouri State, Brady Barkey. Sports Huddle rolling on. We're in the Yuengling Sports Huddle Studios. Yuengling, the iconic American lager, America's oldest brewery. Sports Huddle coming right back. Sports Huddle, SEMO, ESPN. Thank you to Brady Barkey once again for joining us. We're in the Yuengling Sports Huddle Studios. Yuengling, the iconic American lager, America's oldest brewery. And melancholy rest in peace to the Lord of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, passing away at the age of 76. I think it was really cool. He was able to do that farewell concert. But Ozzy Osbourne passing away at the age of 76. So the starting pitcher for the Cardinals, Eric Fetty, passed away a while ago. I'm just not sure anybody has told the Cardinal organization as they continue to run him out there. There's no way, right? There is no way that guy sees the mound again in a Cardinal uniform, right? That's what it's got to be. Fetty destroyed last night by what is going to be potentially the worst team in the history of the sport. They're on pace for 122 losses, the Colorado Rockies, but they smoked Fetty and the Cardinals last night in Denver by a final score of 8-4. Kyle Leahy was good on the mound, and that's about the only positive for Oliver Marmol's team.
Leahy was impressive. You look at his last outing, he was able to punch out 3. You look at him today, stuff was electric. The curveball was a real pitch for him. The sweeper got 2 punch outs, got ahead of almost everybody, and another 7 punch outs, man. It looked really good. So what he was able to do to give us 3 2/3 was important, especially where we were with our pen. So very solid outing by Leahy. Yeah, a lot to be excited about there. I think it has more to do with his overall demeanor and just aptitude. He's always looking for what's next. He looks for the tough conversation of where he can improve, and then we're seeing, even when he had a little bit of a downturn there and not getting a whole lot of swing and miss and it wasn't going his way, starting to understand what he can change to get that, and we're starting to see it now, which is to his credit. There's been a lot of work put in place, but this is a guy that can give you length, can give you short stints, but also you can kind of project down the road. I mean, you can throw him in the rotation at some point to see what he's capable of doing, but he's fulfilled the role that we've asked of him, but the growth has been actually really good. Yeah, I love the fact that he wanted in today. You look at the progression of him coming out yesterday. I saw him at the hotel this morning. He was feeling a lot better, so he wanted to test it out. He got here and it felt really good. Took some reps out in the outfield and did some running and felt awesome, so he came in and said, I'd like to be in the lineup. This is our 3-hole hitter who's done a nice job, so we went with it.
He is speaking of Alec Burleson, who had fouled that ball off the top of his foot 2 games ago, and so you thought, well, bare minimum, he's not going to be in the lineup. And he was. So good for Alec Burleson, man. The guy wanted to be out there and in the lineup, and he was last night. We'll see what lineup Marmol runs out today. Now, from what I'm looking at, the Rockies, I don't think they have announced a starting pitcher. It'll be Andre Palante for the Cardinals. It's a 2-10 game today at Coors Field, so a chance to win the series. Man, you don't want to lose a series to the Rockies. You just don't. So we'll see what Andre Palante can do. Palante had 3 solid starts in a row before his last 2. He's given up 5 and 7 earned runs in his last 2 starts. So that's 12 earned in the last 2 starts. Time for a bounce back. How much he's going to get in terms of ground balls with that sinker, how elevation can work against pitches that move a lot, although Leahy's ball was moving all over the place last night. So Andre Palante on the mound, 2:10 will be first pitch. We'll get much more into the Cardinals. Mike Rennick will rejoin us tomorrow. Say hello to the radiant and ravishing Dawn Shawn. She put a little to-do list for me, so I got to run to the bakery here coming up in the next few minutes. So we'll get you to Clinton and Friends. That is straight ahead. Mike Rennick will rejoin us for the Huddle tomorrow. And again, thank you to Brady Barkey for his time this morning. Stay tuned. Clinton and Friends coming up next on SEMO ESPN. Enjoy your hump day, everybody.